can't fake this.
I wasn't just being crazy.
They were all denied.
And this needs to be dealt with immediately.
Some stories get buried. This one did. Buried, but not forgotten.
One veteran died while he was waiting.
Even when the snow in Block D at the Lakeview Cemetery in Rib Lake, Wisconsin is so deep you can't find his headstone, the story of what was done to Vietnam veteran Donald Mannheim has been waiting to be told.
This just isn't right.
Jeff Hine tried before to tell this story. No one listened.
Is there any sense of how many men and women this could impact?
That's a question that I've asked myself for years.
Now retired, Jeff worked for 6 years beneath the dome of the Taylor County, Wisconsin government building as the Veteran Service Officer. That's how he met Donald Mannheim.
He was exposed to Agent Orange and dioxins in Vietnam.
Mr. Mannheim had Parkinson's. He'd been treated by private doctors at the Marshfield Clinic for more than half a decade. For veterans exposed to Agent Orange, Parkinson's is what's known as a presumptive illness, automatically qualifying you for VA benefits.
So all he had to prove was, I was in Vietnam and now I have Parkinson's. That's all he had to do. And that was denied.
At the Toma VA, Mannheim was seen by neurologist Mary Jo Lanska. Records show in a brief compensation and pension exam, Dr. Lanska decided all the veteran's other doctors were wrong. He didn't even have Parkinson's. Benefits denied. Mannheim appealed, but died waiting. On his death certificate, listed as a contributing factor, Parkinson's. Jeff Hine had seen enough. He'd had other veterans go to Toma VA for benefit exams and see Dr. Lanska.
They were all denied.
Jeff blew the whistle. He wrote this letter in 2017 to Toma VA leadership about what happened to Donald Mannheim and spelled out several similar cases with one common denominator.
Dr. Lanska.
Among those similar cases, the stories of Logan Becker and David Kaczmarek.
The truth be told.
David served during both wars in Iraq, was exposed to toxic substances, and survived this suicide car bomb.
This one I'm very proud of.
He received a Purple Heart for shrapnel wounds and had a documented battlefield traumatic brain injury, a TBI. He too developed Parkinson's, was diagnosed and treated by private doctors in Marshfield, and got sent to Toma VA for a benefits exam by Dr. Lanska.
I was in it for less than 20 minutes. She determined with the medical that I didn't have a TBI. My jaw dropped.
What'd she say about your Parkinson's?
I didn't have any Parkinson's.
Like many who served, Logan Becker keeps his story mostly under wraps.
That was awarded to me on July 31st, 2010 for injuries sustained in Afghanistan.
He's proud of his service, but putting on that uniform changed him. Sleepless nights, headaches, at times debilitating.
Where they'll put me right down and I go upstairs and I just crawl under the blanket and I don't move.
Mood swings out of nowhere.
I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, I guess.
His records explain for him 3 brain blows in 3 months, including 2 bomb blasts.
This one took off like pretty much the whole passenger side of our vehicle.
Logan was turret gunner, standing out the top of the vehicle when his world exploded.
So you just went flying.
Yeah. I woke up the next morning in the hospital in Afghanistan and I felt like I went one round with Mike Tyson.
He came home to Wisconsin with that Purple Heart and pounding head. His records show in 2011, a VA psychologist diagnosed PTSD, but also noted many of his symptoms were likely due to TBI.
So then you go for a TBI exam.
Yep.
And you see who?
Dr. Lanska. I spent about 5 minutes in her office.
Logan's records show during the brief exam, Dr. Lanska claimed his brain had recovered. His irritability and headaches were due to irregular sleep, not sleeping, had nothing to do with Logan's war service. That was all because he occasionally worked weekends for a DJ service.
Denied, denied, denied.
Not being a neurologist, I'm just an old infantry grunt, but it didn't make any sense.
Jeff, in his whistleblowing letter, asked Toma VA to review the cases to determine their correctness and look into Dr. Lanska's other cases.
The only message that I ever got back is it's being looked into.
Nothing changed?
Not that I'm aware of, but I stopped sending people over there.
Jeff retired. Years passed. But some stories just won't stay buried. Still ahead, a KARE 11 investigation discovers a pattern of misdiagnosed veterans with the same common denominator.
And her name is Mary Jo Lanska.
Dr. Lanska.
Dr. Mary Jo Lanska.
Broken Promises continues after the break. The war-torn streets of Ramadi, Iraq feel ever present.
To me, it feels like it happened yesterday. I'll never forget what happened.
34 of Brandon Winishek's fellow Marines were killed during the 7-month deployment. Hundreds more were wounded. A bomb brought down part of this building Brandon was in.
Next thing you know, boom. And I had been thrown, across the room.
Brandon survived 3 other IED explosions. When he came home, the symptoms the VA attributed solely to post-traumatic stress seemed unshakable.
I was struggling to, not kill myself.
In 2012, Brandon, now a police officer, wondered if he might also have what's become known as the signature wound of the War on Terror, a blast-induced traumatic brain injury, or TBI. He turned to the Minneapolis VA. A TBI exam was done at the Compensation and Pension Clinic. The doctor wrote, "I cannot find any residual cognitive deficits." For Brandon, no diagnosis meant no treatment. Just this letter stating service connection for TBI is denied. What Brandon didn't know is he'd been seen by a doctor who, by the VA's own rules, was not qualified to diagnose TBI. Part of a nationwide scandal first exposed back in 2015 by a KARE 11 investigation.
There was a tenacious young journalist named A.J. Lagoe who did some really fantastic journalism, some really fair reporting and work at the Minneapolis VA.
There were congressional hearings and inspector general probes as KARE 11's Invisible Wounds investigation uncovered VA systematically violating its own policy that only 4 types of highly trained specialists are allowed to diagnose TBI.
Carball.
KARE 11 discovered veteran
I got all blue to hell.
after veteran denied care and benefits
So I was sitting right there.
because they were misdiagnosed by an unqualified VA doctor.
It's a big thing to sit and wonder in your head. Am I nuts?
The VA promised to make right the injustice, recalling nearly 25,000 veterans for new TBI exams.
We're going through it with a fine-tooth comb nationally to make sure we get all those veterans in and we get them what they deserve.
But our new investigation raises serious questions about whether VA truly fulfilled that promise to all the impacted veterans, or in some cases, just moved on from unqualified doctors to inadequate exams and continued denial of care and benefits.
It took me finding your story.
For his new TBI exam, Brandon was instructed to go to the Tomah, Wisconsin VA.
And I see Mary Jo Lanska.
Records show VA neurologist Mary Jo Lanska did no neuropsych testing, administering only an MMSE. It stands for Mini Mental State Exam. More on that in a minute.
And once again, I was, denied TBI. I was told I did not have a traumatic brain injury.
No diagnosis, again, no treatment.
So the VA's telling me I'm fine, but clearly I'm not.
In March of 2021, he asked for a consult to go outside the VA for private TBI testing. but he needed approval from Toma VA Neurology.
But guess who's in charge of Toma VA Neurology? The same doctor that conducted the 2015 examination. And her name is Mary Jo Lanska. And Dr. Lanska writes me a letter.
The letter states Dr. Mary Jo Lanska declined the consult because her previous screening in 2015 found you do not have a TBI.
Toma VA turned me down, told me to kick rocks.
Desperate for answers, Brandon went out of pocket to Gunderson Health, where doctors said the VA screening test, that MMSE, was totally inadequate.
It's not sensitive or specific for traumatic brain injury.
Dr. Justin Otis is a neuropsychiatrist. He says the MMSE is typically used to spot dementia in elderly patients with simple questions like this.
What is today's year?
2015.
Are these brief screening tools adequate to diagnose traumatic brain injury? They are not. Those types of assessments are not particularly useful in these cases.
At Gunderson, Brandon got real neurological testing with a clear diagnosis.
Does Brandon have a TBI? Yes. Brandon has sustained multiple mild traumatic brain injuries through his military career and has deficits that are, I believe, to be permanent.
I needed that high quality examination that the VA promised to give me and never did.
Still ahead, a search for answers and accountability.
Dr. Lanska, I'd like to ask you some questions about all the veterans that you've been misdiagnosing.
Broken Promises continues after the break. The pictures on our walls often reveal the life accomplishments of which we're most proud.
Yes.
For Abby Siakper, it's the same, with the uniform she put on as she sat down to share her story.
And I wear my uniform today because I'm proud of my service and I'm proud of what I did. And the story needs to be told.
Abby's story includes service in the Illinois Army National Guard. She flew Black Hawks. Her records document a line of duty head injury.
Hitting my head on the ground and knocked unconscious.
Years later, after she took off her uniform, while working as a civilian on a military base, she took another brain blow, falling off the wing of a plane.
Basically landed spread eagle on my back and hit my head first on the tarmac.
She began seeing a private neurologist at Gunderson Health because within weeks, she developed strange tic-like movements in her hands and feet, delayed speech, and cognitive functioning.
She diagnosed me with functional movement disorder.
Abby's doctor wrote in her assessment, "I suspect this latest head injury was the straw that broke the camel's back." And of Abby's symptoms, she wrote, she has no control over them. Wanting a second opinion about treatment, Abby turned to Toma VA. But instead of care, got insults. Records show Dr. Mary Jo Lanska reviewed Abby's chart and records, never even saw her, but put this note in Abby's file about people with functional movement disorder having common underlying agendas that include avoidance of work and monetary gain.
It accused me of malingering, which is faking my symptoms. I've never faked anything. Nobody goes into the military to fake things. You can't fake this.
Abby's private neurologist sent the VA a scathing letter writing, "The VA needs to seriously review their understanding of this very common disorder because it dooms these individuals to prolonged disability and denial of much needed and deserved care."
It's a slap in the face. It's a slap in the face.
It's a story we heard from veteran.
Put it on the report that I didn't even have MS.
After veteran who saw Dr. Mary Jo Lanska.
What'd she say about your Parkinson's?
I didn't have any Parkinson's.
KARE 11 obtained data through a FOIA request. It shows just from 2012 to 2020, Dr. Lanska did exams for 786 disability claims. But the Department of Veterans Affairs told KARE 11 it would be too much work to provide data revealing how many of those claims were denied. For a year and a half, VA leadership from D.C. to Toma refused to be interviewed. They downplayed and obfuscated. Dr. Lanska never responded to emails or phone calls, so we knocked on her door.
I'd like to ask you some questions about all the veterans that you've been misdiagnosing. Does not look like she wants to talk to us. When you start hearing that this isn't just you, that this has happened to veteran after veteran after veteran who's seen Dr. Lanska, what do you think?
I think we all got f***ed.
Still ahead, members of Congress demand answers.
That was a pattern. This wasn't just one mistake, one misdiagnosis.
Welcome back to Broken Promises. This investigation exposed Toma VA neurologist Mary Jo Lanska misdiagnosing veterans over and over for years.
When a problem is identified, it has to be addressed. This problem has been identified for quite some time, and it's never been addressed.
U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin wrote in September of 2022 to VA Secretary Dennis McDonough requesting a comprehensive investigation into the practices of Dr. Mary Lanska. VA responded claiming no trends of negative opinions were identified, a finding that defied reality. Carol Levin continued to identify war-wounded veterans like Steve Rhodes, who survived 7 IED explosions but was denied benefits after obvious misdiagnosis.
She said I didn't have a TBI.
I have been demanding that the VA do a thorough investigation and review.
Responding to continued pressure from Senator Baldwin, the Department of Veterans Affairs reviewed a random selection of Dr. Lanska's benefits exams and found 31% were incorrect.
And that's a problem.
On April 5th, Dr. Daniel Zomchek vowed to make things right for all impacted veterans. He's director over a multi-state region of VA hospitals, including Toma. We asked, what was done years ago when Toma received that whistleblowing letter warning about Dr. Lanska?
The letter that you're referring to, dated in 2017, we received just recently, actually from your office, in preparation of this, of this meeting. But we are looking into that now, of course.
And this needs to be dealt with immediately.
Congressman Derek Van Orden is a retired Navy SEAL who gets his medical care at Toma VA. He's on the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, which called for an Inspector General investigation, not just of Dr. Lanska, but of a possible systemic failure to provide adequate TBI disability exams nationwide.
I cannot express to you how seriously we take these issues. We had the Secretary of Veterans Affairs in my office lighten him up. We're not fooling around, dude.
While finally acknowledging problems with Dr. Lanska's benefits exams, the VA defended her, claiming back in April there were no issues with her actual medical care.
Is Dr. Lanska still seeing patients at the Toma VA?
Dr. Lanska is still seeing patients at the Toma VA, yes. Dr. Lanska provides high quality care. She has been doing so for many years.
A claim that flew in the face of what our investigation found. Take the case of Zach Screedy.
It was there. I wasn't just being crazy or, spending too much time on WebMD.
The Iraq War veteran was suffering, in pain, with rapidly worsening symptoms his family, who were medical professionals, thought might be multiple sclerosis. He turned to the Toma VA.
What doctor looked at your records in neurology?
Dr. Lanska, Mary Jo Lanska.
Zach never met Dr. Lanska. Records show she just did a neurological consult, a chart review, and determined this is not multiple sclerosis. He didn't need to be seen or even tested.
No additional testing needed at this time.
This is a recording of a nurse at Toma telling him the results of Dr. Lanska's consult. Zach's desperation is clear.
So what else can I do to try to figure out what's wrong with me?
Instead of tests and treatment, Dr. Lanska suggested he get mental health help and
doing things like the Tai Chi, yoga, engage in routine exercise.
They told you to do Tai Chi.
And yoga, or yoga.
he laughs now, but at the time was in a dark place.
You were so desperate you had to call the suicide crisis line.
I knew how the guys that lit themselves on fire in the parking lots, what was going through their minds.
Desperate for care, he turned outside the VA to Gunderson Health, where a neurologist looked at his list of symptoms and quickly ordered an MRI. Zach has multiple sclerosis.
The lesions were so numerous and so lit up, there was no question about it.
In this April 21st letter to VA Secretary Dennis McDonough, Senator Baldwin stated concern that the inadequacies of Dr. Lanska's care also involve her clinical work and cited as an example Zach's case. Cue the VA Secretary paying a personal visit to Toma.
I promised you that this is a top priority for us.
After more than a year of obfuscation and outright denial, more than half a decade after a veteran's death and whistleblower warnings were ignored, the Department of Veterans Affairs had finally seen enough.
Dr. Lanska no longer works at VA.
Approximately 600 veterans, people like Steve and Logan, are being recalled, promised new neurological testing, and, to right the injustice, potentially decades of backdated benefits.
And we won't rest until we get you the care and the benefits, not only that you deserve, but that you have earned.
We told you, some stories just won't stay buried.